Welcome to the midweek mailbag. We are back. It is week 18. Some would say the last week of the NFL season. Detroit Lions fans don't need to say that, though. We got more football to be played after that. My name is Jeremy Reisman. I am the producer over at prideofdetroit.com. You can find me at Detroit Online on Twitter. With me, bringing in the new year with us, is the managing editor of Pride of Detroit, is at Erik Schlitt on Twitter. Erik Schlitt, the machine, is here. How we doing, buddy? Happy New Year.
Hey, bud. Happy New Year. I am excited that this is not the last game of the season, so we get to keep doing our thing for a few more weeks, hopefully another month, and we'll see how far it can go.
Yeah, and it's also kind of nice, a little bit at least, that while there are some stakes to week 18, we can mostly just kind of relax here, because the worst the Lions can do is the 3 seed, and also the most likely outcome, even if they win, is still getting the 3 seed. So, we get to play around with the week, not stress out about it, knowing that everything is still ahead of this team.
Yeah, the NFL schedule makers were smart about how they scheduled this last week, or how they placed the teams, right?
Sure.
Because for Detroit, you need X, Y, and Z to happen, right? You need the Eagles to lose, you need the Cowboys to lose, and you have to win. So what do? They put both the Eagles and the Cowboys games until the afternoon hour, makes the game a little bit more meaningful for Detroit. For the Vikings, it's the same thing. They need 3 teams to lose and to get into the playoffs, and so they put those games are in the afternoon slot as well. And
Right.
So a lot of the importance of this game seems minimal. At the same time, there's just enough of a hint there to make you want to be excited about getting the win on both sides of the ball.
That's right. Well, this is the midweek mailbag where we answer your Detroit Lions questions. I'm going to preface the entire episode right now. We are not talking officiating. We are done. We are turning that page. So You don't need to skip ahead any parts, because I know most Lions fans are done talking about it, done listening about it. We're not. I turned down every single question that we got from that, because it's time to move on. It's time to move forward. It's been 72 hours since the game. We're moving forward. But we are going to start with a topic that might be a little uncomfortable to talk about. And it comes from our friend Swag Kazakage on Twitter. Asks, can you talk about Jonah Jackson's play lately? Where has he been struggling, and what has he been struggling with?
I don't know if I can put a single point on it.
Yeah.
There's, when he's at his best, it's when he's communicating with others very well. It's when they're using him more in movement. You haven't seen as much of that, I think, in the last few weeks. He's been more of a stagnant blocker, asked to do what's in front of him, and that's not really, I think, where he's best suited. He's a lot more mobile and a lot better when he's more mobile. And so, overall, I think the line has look, they're really good, and our standards for the offensive line are very high, right? Yeah. So even the smallest bit of problems, we're starting to nitpick them, because we think this is a top 1 or 2 offensive line in the NFL. End of list. They're the top 2. And so I don't think he's been playing bad. At the same time, if we're expecting elite, we're nitpicking him, right? So we're saying, hey, if he does this a little bit better, this a little bit better. I think he's been injured, and that's maybe been nagging him a little bit too. It just seems like his rhythm is a little bit off. Maybe it's the fact that they're not pulling him as much. Maybe it's the fact that he's had these nagging things. It's really not something that's like, oh, it's this and he can fix it. I think it's a combination of things that it's really hard to identify.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been at least a little bit more down on Jonah this year than you have. I mean, it's frustrating, though, because when he's on, he is one of the best run blocking guards in football. That's his ceiling. I feel like we haven't seen that Jonah Jackson in a couple months, and maybe that is, he battled injury at the beginning of the season, and I know he's not on the injury report anymore, but that doesn't mean he's not suffering from something. That's just how the NFL works. But it's frustrating, and it's got to be frustrating to him too, because this is such an important stretch for him, for his football future. And
contract year, yeah.
Exactly. And I don't know, to me, I think he's losing his one-on-ones more than I expected him to lose his one-on-ones. And listen, like, pass blocking has never been his forte. I mean, he's not terrible at it. He's not. I wouldn't even say he's bad at it. But he is more, I would say, of an average pass blocker than a good one. And that's maybe what's gotten exposed a little bit as of late. But I mean, Dan Campbell said it now a couple times this week. Like, there was way too many plays against the Cowboys this week where the running back was getting hit in the backfield. And I think part of it was, and Campbell said this too, is that's a really, really fast defense. And that's not something they've gone up against a lot this year. And RJ Ochoa warned us about this, but actually in a way that seemed like it favored the Lions, right? If this Lions team wants to be one that can bully a team, going up against a smaller but faster defensive line seemed like maybe that would favor Detroit. But instead, some of those things seem to catch them off guards with the slow developing plays and the immediate penetration from a much faster defense. And so, Jonah was having issues. Graham was having issues. Decker was having issues at times. I think you can look at that game, though, and be like, you know what, maybe that's a good experience. Maybe that's something that the Lions needed to see because, listen, like there's all different sorts of defenses you're going to face. I would say the 49ers are a pretty fast defense that you're going to have to deal with if you get that far in the playoffs. If you make it as far as you want to, you're probably going to have to go through Dallas again. So now you have that in your back pocket. You know what that speed is going to look like in the game. But needless to say, though, Jonah needs to start playing better in a hurry here.
Yeah, I'm with you on a lot of points, and I disagree with a couple of. I think you're a little bit harder on Jonah than I am, like you said.
Sure.
And I get that point of view. I agree, though. This is a good learning experience. I did expect them to bully the offensive line a little bit more. I was expecting more of a game plan. If you read any of my pregame articles, it was all focused around being bullies up front and establishing the run game, and they had a real hard time doing that. And I think that impacted what they wanted to do, and it was a change, right? Yeah. And so, like you said, hopefully just a learning experience overall, and something that they can take, with them moving forward.
Well, let's stick with the offensive line here and maybe jump a little bit further into the future here because Nate Savage has an interesting question about the future of the offensive line, which I think is a kind of fascinating topic. Says, what does the future of the offensive line look like? Graham is 31 and a free agent. Sewell is going to take up a large amount of the cap soon. Frank is a stud, but a bunch of injuries. Jonah is a free agent, and Decker isn't getting any younger. Might an offensive line rebuild be coming? I think that's a fascinating question because I feel like obviously we don't know where the Jonah Jackson thing is going. They couldn't get a deal done before his contract year started. At some point there were conversations, but it didn't really seem like it ever got super close to getting done. Does Colby Sorsdal fit into this conversation? At what point are you drafting an offensive tackle of the future? At what point are you drafting anyone? Where do you see it going? I know you were like a big proponent of drafting one last year and drafting one this year. We don't really know where Sorsdal is in his development, other than the fact is they don't want to start him right now.
Yeah, I think the offensive line is such a integral part of what they want to do that you have to continue to add to it. You have to go into this draft and add somebody who is talented enough to start. Maybe they don't need to because of the moves you make in the offseason. Graham is not a long-term solution, which is why they drafted Colby. But Graham can be a good solution for another year or two or more, right? Like he's 31 isn't the end of the world for NFL players anymore.
True.
And Graham's arguably having his best year as a professional. So I do think Graham will be one of their top priorities to re-sign, and it is a bit of an unknown with Jonah. I think price is going to come down to it. Injury history is going to come down to it. Both those things are going to work together. As with Ragnow, yes, there's an injury history, but he also plays through it like a crazy man. But that is also why getting a guy like Glasgow back is critical, because you want to have a backup for that. And I think over the next couple of years, if your plan is to keep Glasgow, you have that luxury of not having to force anything, right?
Yeah.
Could you draft an interior guy that can play guard and center? Sure, certainly. But it's not going to be as much of a priority. I do think having a guy who can play tackle is going to be more of a priority. We talk often about how there's certain positions where you need to have three capable starters: outside corner, offensive tackle. Those are and
Yep.
an edge. Those are like the three big areas where you need to have three guys that can play because the position's so critical. And right now, they don't have three starting corners and they don't have three starting tackles. They have two, and maybe one on a corner. But you have. I think those are going to be your priorities going into the offseason. They're going to need a capable offensive lineman. They're going to need a corner, and they're going to need an edge rusher. And those are three areas that you need depth. So, yes, you're going to need to replace Decker eventually, maybe a couple years down the road. Yes, you're going to need to replace Graham. That could be a couple years down the road if you can get him signed. Jonah's the big question mark. I'm not worried about Frank. I'm not worried about Sewell. I'm not worried about Sewell's contract. They're going to give him a
worth
option.
It's going to be whatever it is. It's going to be worth it.
Yeah. I think they can sign him to a 5th-year option.
Yeah.
In like a week.
Yeah.
They can just be like, yep, we're picking it up.
Yeah.
And it's going to be like crazy money, like 18 plus, right? Like it's something like that is what this projected at. So it's going to be a huge number, but it's not going to matter because you're going to pay him in islands, and that's fine. So I'm not overly worried about the immediacy of the offensive line. I think you have time to make adjustments. I think you have time to add more depth.
Yeah.
And if you look at these successful offensive lines that have been successful for year after year after year, it's not necessarily because they've just had the guys. They've drafted and developed, and it takes years to develop offensive linemen properly. And so I expect that to continue. I would not be surprised if there's a top 100 pick on an offensive lineman. It would not surprise me if they drafted one in the first round, because if you find a guy that fits the system that can do what you want, you need capable players beyond your starting five. You see that every year, and you're going to need it going in the future anyways.
Yeah, I think that the chess piece really that all the dominoes fall afterwards is Jonah. We don't really know where things stand there, and if they re-sign him, then suddenly offensive lineman isn't that big of a need this year in terms of spending a day one pick on him. I think day two is kind of like where I would expect it to happen this year, particularly with offensive tackle because of everything you just said. They need a third one, and if you have a guy who can just be your swing tackle this year and potentially be your starting left or right tackle in the post-Taylor Decker era, that's like the ideal situation for me, is a guy that you get in there for some, jumbo sets in his rookie year. Maybe he has to play a little bit due to injury replacement next year, and then eventually he replaces Decker because, listen, I think Decker is still playing at a pretty high level. I think Lions fans are starting to sour on him again, which is, I don't know. I think for some reason Lions fans can only like Taylor Decker for a certain amount of period before they start souring on him again, and it's kind of inexplicable to me. But it will be interesting to see when that transition happens, whether Sewell moves to left tackle or stays at right tackle. At this point, I almost feel like he's played right tackle long enough where why would you move anything from that? And as we've been saying for years now, that the difference between left tackle and right tackle is so little. Especially when most teams Micah Parsons is mostly playing opposite the right tackle these days. So
is Rashawn Gary. So is Daniel Hunter. Like all of in the NFC North, the top edge rushers are against the right tackle.
Right. So I don't see necessarily the benefit to moving him in left tackle. I understand it's the blind side of your quarterback, and you don't want to get hit from the blind side and all that sort of stuff. But the best edge rushers in the league are now sometimes lining up over the right tackle. So I'm not sure I would move that, but we know he's capable at either end as well. But let's move forward with that. There'll be plenty of time to talk about the future of this team and offensive line stuff. We got about 1 million questions about a topic that we've already touched on a little bit, but since we are now closer to decision time here, let's move to Caitlin Rose's question, which says, with CJ, and others potentially coming back from injury, how much do you see Dan Campbell using them in the Vikings games to get them ready for the upcoming playoff games? Specifically, with Gardner Johnson's return, how will this affect Iffy's and Kirby's usage? So let's start with just like a quick injury update. Dan Campbell said a couple times this week now he expects pretty much C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Aleem McNeil to play this week. We don't know if that means start. We don't know if that means play all 4 quarters, half, whatever it is. They're going to play. Not so much with James Houston. It seems like he's still maybe a week away, which makes sense. He's only had one practice under his belt. But yeah, let's talk about C.J. Gardner returning and what it means for everyone else in that secondary. Because to me, I don't have a good answer. The only answer I have is when I kind of approached the topic with Dan Campbell last week. He's like, a lot of people seem to be thinking it's going to be either C.J. Gardner-Johnson out there or Fatu Melifonwu. And he's like, you shouldn't be thinking about that. I don't know why people are thinking like that. And so, I mean, the insinuation there is pretty clear. Like, he wants both those guys out there at the same time. So how do we do that?
Well, you do it by maybe sacrificing a little bit from everybody, right? If you want to get Gardner-Johnson out on the field, there may be some snaps you take away from Iffy, some snaps you take away from Kirby, some snaps you take away from Branch, and some snaps you take away from the linebackers. And so if you just take a little bit from everybody, you can give, Gardner-Johnson a bigger chunk of the pie, right? And so it's possible that that's the route they go. It's also possible that they just start living more in dime because they want to get their best complement of guys out there. The hard part with that concept is that when you look at how the most likely scenario is that it would come at the expense of a linebacker, right? But when you look at how they use their linebackers, last week, Anzalone didn't leave the field. Derek Barnes played 71% of snaps, and Campbell played 62% of snaps. Even Reeves-Maben, who you could just say, well, just give Reeves-Mabens, that was 18% of snaps, right? So they've been leaning on their linebackers a lot. Now, if you keep wanting to, what they did against Dallas was they leaned on their linebackers and they went lighter on their defensive tackles. I think some of that was because they were missing Aleem. But if you get Aleem back, now maybe do you still have that concept? Are you still going to want to stay bigger? There's a lot of options in which they can go. So it may not be as clean as these are our starting 11. It may be like, these are our starting 14. And because they're all these 14 guys are going to get over 50% of the snaps. And so it just gives them so much more creativity.
Yeah. Unpredictability.
Iffy, Branch, and CJ are all position flexible.
Yeah.
And so that allows you to play a lot of matchup. It allows you to drop a couple of them into the box. It allows you to blitz them, which Aaron Glenn's been doing a lot more. So there's not a clean answer to this, like a 1-for-1.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Dan Campbell was alluding to when he was answering your question.
Yeah.
Was that it doesn't just the addition of one doesn't mean the subtraction of one. It could mean the subtraction of a quarter. You know what I mean? So yeah. I think it's going to be up in the air, and that's purposeful. They want to be mysterious.
The thing that I think we have to keep in mind is that this team is still going to want to defend the run first. That is still going to be this defense's main priority. And so they are going to be, I think, hesitant to take a linebacker off the field because those guys are so good. But at the same time, all these guys that we're talking about, Branch, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Iffy, all those guys are also pretty darn good against the run as well. And so it complicates things where you're right. Like you have an embarrassment of riches at a position, whether you want to call it linebacker or strong safety or whatever. Like these guys that can plug the middle of the field, that can defend against tight ends and slot receivers. You have so many guys that can do it, and you can also do this like matchup based, right? Like if you think one of these guys is better against a tight end that they like. So like this upcoming week, right? Vikings don't have a good tight end right now, a good healthy tight end. So maybe you put the guy out there that you like best against Addison, right? A guy who will play in the slot a lot. Or you play a guy, a safety that you think is going to be a good bracket for Justin Jefferson. You can just be much more personnel and matchup based with all these sort of parts, because while they're all kind of good at the same things, I think you can say, well, like Iffy's height, Iffy's length is going to be good against this particular player this week.
I, it's 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 something that fans are going to have to get comfortable with as well, because when you add depth and you create more matchup adjustments, like you want to add depth in the secondary to be more matchup based, well, you're going to have to counter that with going with fewer bodies up front. And if you have fewer bodies up front, then those roles shift,
Yeah.
right? Now, instead of having Hutchinson being like a pass rusher in a 4-man front, if you're putting him in like a 3-man front, now he's holding bodies and taking double teams and opening up room for linebackers. And so if Gardner Johnson comes back and they play more matchup based and you're seeing a lot more dime, and then Hutchinson isn't getting sacks, I don't want to hear oh, Hutchinson can't do anything anymore. You know what I mean? Because that's the narrative that's going to come out of something like that, right? And so, but that's the way that they want this defense to operate. This isn't a line 4 guys up, 2 linebackers, and just run at people. They want to be matchup based. They want to be flexible. They want to try and be able to confuse you, because right now there's weaknesses in this team. The coverage issues in the secondary are real.
Yep.
And the way you can cover those up is with disguise, is with pressure and creativity. And so if you don't have the talent, you better have the scheme and the game plan, and add in more guys like Aleem and CJ and Houston eventually. That gives them that flexibility to disguise some of their issues.
And one of their other issues that hasn't come up in recent weeks too much because of the teams they've played is mobile quarterbacks. And I feel like getting CJ Gardner-Johnson back along with all these other guys that can plug the middle of the field, well then suddenly, taking a linebacker off the field for someone who's a little bit more athletic seems like a pretty smart thing to do. And so I'm not saying that issue is necessarily going to be fixed, but if you have to go play the Eagles at some point, if somehow the Lions get matched up against Seattle at some point, maybe you're a little bit better suited to defend against that. If you have to play Lamar Jackson in the Super Bowl, if we want to go that far down the line.
Well, look at when they played Lamar. They played Lamar. They had Anzalone essentially shadowing him.
Right.
Now you don't have 4-6 Anzalone. You have 4-3 Iffy,
right,
or Chauncey. You know what I mean? Like you can match up more athletically now against mobile quarterbacks with the emergence of Iffy and the return of CJ.
The last thing before we get to go, because a lot of people have asked this question, and I understand the tendency to want this to happen, is, okay, we have all these good safeties, nickel corners. Can we help out the outside corners at all? Can any of these guys kick outside? Because the Lions can't seem to figure out what's going on there. Cameron Sutton is struggling. He's got a foot injury he's dealing with as well, which may have contributed to why he struggled so much against the Cowboys. The Lions can't even seem to figure out who their cornerback 2 is, whether it's Khalil Dorsey or does Jerry Jacobs come back in, or obviously
Vildor.
They tried Vildor last week. Is there any scenario where you see one of these guys kicking out, at least situationally?
No.
Yeah.
No, they're not schemed. They're not built like that. They're all built more to be like inside guys. So if you want them to help the outside corners out, you actually run more dime and you bring more slot help in the middle, and then it basically squeezes the zone that the outside guys have to cover, makes it a lot more. It makes it a lot easier for the outside guys to have a smaller area that they need to defend by having, both like Gardner Johnson and Branch in the slot potentially, or if you slide Iffy down. So I don't think this is you're not going to help your outside guys. I think Cam is who he is. And then opposite, they're going to play matchup. Yeah. Last week, they were really, really focused on defending the run against the Cowboys. Vildor is a better run defender. Vildor got the start. The week before, they wanted to play matchup speed against the Vikings. So that's why Dorsey got the start, right? So in my opinion, they're going to continue to play matchup based with that CB2. And the only way you help them is by adding more talent, more speed, more rangy guys in the slots.
Fair enough. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, more of your Lions questions, including talking some James Houston and including talking about who is the team's MVP right now, which I think is a very fascinating question to ask and answer. And we'll get to all that and plus much, much more when we come back here on the Week 18 edition of Midweek Mailbag. We'll be right back. Okay. Some people are talking about some
Bugs.
Isaiah Bugs. Oh yeah,
Uh-oh.
that is very much a I just got cut tweet. Wow. Okay. Show it up here on the stream. It says, thank you, Detroit, for everything for the past year. It has been amazing, from meeting new people, playing with great teammates, but the time has come for me to say goodbye. Detroit 96 out. Yeah, I don't think you can interpret that in any other way. That, wow. I mean, I guess it isn't all that surprising considering everything.
Well, because you're returning a Liam. Geez, they could go a lot of different ways. But I think people are going to be really mad if it's Bugs' cut or Jason Kabinda. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, which scene? Who?
Well,
I still think Kabinda can go to the practice squad and you
Yes.
can elevate him. You know what I mean?
That's what I think is going to happen.
I'm just saying, if they decide that they're going to bring him Kabinda back that way. But look, you've got to make room for at least 2 guys this week.
Right.
And so it would be strange for them to cut him on a Tuesday unless you're like just activating Gardner Johnson. But you don't have a need to activate him today. You can activate him Saturday.
Yeah.
You also have I hate the name. I don't like naming names, but it sure seemed like Fersker was just a temporary elevation as well. And so, like, I think you could get him back on the practice squad as well. I don't think their goal was to keep him long term. So, it's also worth noting that Alualu played more defensive snaps than any defensive tackle in last game as well. So,
I mean, I think you probably do it this early in the week just to give the man a shot for something, right? Because why waste Bugs' time by keeping him on the team for 2-3 more practices when you're just going to cut him? Like,
and it must mean that they're not planning on him coming back to the practice squad either. Yeah.
I mean, based on that tweet from Isaiah Bugs, like, that is a goodbye. I'm not coming back.
That sure looks like it.
I don't. Yeah. I do not. By the way, I do not get the sense that Jimmy Dean is saying in the chat that Bugs was a problem in the locker room. I know. No, like, I think it was. I know he didn't take the initial news very well, right? We all saw him kind of go off on Twitter and stuff, but I think at some point he accepted it. I think at some point he used it to motivate himself. And he did get back in the lineup and started playing a little bit. Yeah. I don't feel like that's something that festered or something that he resented or whatever. And that is also a very heartfelt goodbye too. It's not an angry goodbye. Watch the Rams pick him up. It's a tough situation though for him. I do feel bad because, I mean, he went from like, I don't know, he went from like MVP to doghouse pretty darn quick. They signed the man to a 2-year deal this offseason and talked about how he was so essential to what they did in run defense. But for all the Lions fans that have been bellyaching about this entire situation, look at what the Lions run defense has done this year. Mainly without him. I'm not saying that he's a bad player or he deserved this sort of treatment, but the Lions have not been suffering at all without him.
The hard part about the NFL is that it can be very mean.
Yeah.
At times.
Sure.
And when you get players, when you get a deeper roster that's better, there are going to be players that don't fit into your plans. And there's going to be guys who exist on the roster that are good people that get lost. You know what I mean?
I mean, look at the entire defensive line from where it was at the beginning in training camp Or go back to OTAs, where it is now. Charles Harris, your starter, now a regular inactive.
Yeah.
Romeo Okwara, everyone's thinking maybe he finally kind of gets back to that 10 sack. Now he's mostly inactive or playing a dozen snaps a game. It's been crazy. It's been unexpected. And I know some people have been like, well, what does that say about our new defensive line coach? I'm not ready to go there yet. Because I think you can also just point to, well, I mean, again, you can point to the fact that the defensive tackles are still doing their job. The lines are still stopping the run and a top 3 rate. Mm-hmm. Aiden Hutchinson is still getting better. Josh Paschal is starting to develop a little bit, which I think has led to some of the edge changes. And so I'm not, and I mean, Romeo's, let's be honest, getting towards the end of his career. Charles Harris is probably getting towards the end of his career. And I'm not saying last year was a fluke, but there's now been much more so-so play from Charles Harris's career than great play. But yeah, I also, I want to ask Dan Campbell about Alu a little bit, because I'm curious if he's part of the plan at all going forward, because getting Aleem back kind of is that's what Alu was, in my opinion. That's that's more of a 1-for-1 switch than Alu for Bugs or Aleem for Bugs, right? Those are two different kinds of defensive tackles. So I am curious what the plan is for Alu going forward.
Yeah, there's only so many spots, right? That's the thing I keep coming back to. And you have to look long-term, you have to look short-term. There's just so many different things. And if you want to get guys back, which they're going to be getting guys back, you're going to lose. Like, do you think I was happy to see Chase Lucas get cut? Like, no. Like, I love Chase. I think Chase is phenomenal, and I think he has a future in this league. He's probably, in my opinion, their best gunner. Like, and so that was unfortunate. And so, but I also think, like, in this business, it's just cruel. It's just cruel sometimes. And we talked about it the last, in a previous show, like that this is going to be a roster where you're going to have to move on from some guys that have been there the whole year.
Yeah.
At a very difficult, right at the last minute. And that's,
Bugs is a great example. I mean,
right.
Just thinking about, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, because a lot of people and continue to ask us the same question. Like, all right, well, who's gone with some of these guys that are coming back? Well, I think we just got an answer to one of those. We don't really want to answer that question because of how heartbreaking this is going to be for some of these guys. The guys that have not only been here all year, some have been here since 2021, like since this entire regime started, and seen this team get built from the ground up and been a big part of, Bugs was a big part of this team turning the corner. Mm-hmm. And maybe not so much this year, but he helped build the identity of this defense being a run stuffing team. They got much better at that as the season went on last year. And I kept telling people that was happening, but everyone's looking at like, oh, well, Chicago ran all over him twice last year. But if you looked at the end of that, and the Carolina game obviously too, but either way, Bugs played a huge part in that defense building an identity. And unfortunately for him, they found guys who were just as good or maybe better than him at doing what they were doing. Same thing with a guy like Chase Lucas. Same thing with, some of these other guys that are going to get cut in the next 3-4 days here. It's gut-wrenching because, you saw, I can't help but go back to the clip of Dan Campbell Monday Night Football interview where he's like, someone asked him about the previous year teams, and he's like, I'll never forget those guys. Those guys mean so much to me. And unfortunately, some of those guys are still here and won't be here for the playoff run, for everything they've been building towards in the past 3 years. They're not going to be there to reap the rewards. Now they can watch from afar, and I'm sure they can feel, some of the ownership of whatever the Lions end up doing in the postseason this year, but they're not going to be there in the locker room to celebrate. They're not going to be there on game day continuing to, contribute to what they do. And so that, I can't even imagine how that's going to feel. Like Bugs being able to tweet something like that when clearly he's gone through the ringer this year is, to me, a very mature and emotionally intelligent thing to do.
It's it's an interesting situation for the Lions because on the one hand they are so loyal to players who help them through. At the same time, they're also willing to make the hard decisions in order to make the team better.
Yeah.
And so it's a hard balance to be like that player's coach that loves the guys, but also be willing to move on from those players. But look, we've seen it. I mean, look at Jamal. You know what I mean? Like Jamal was an integral part of what this team was last year, and they were like, we have to get better. And it's the same kind of situation with Bugs. And I know people aren't going to like to hear this. It's kind of the same situation with James Houston, right? Like they had big goals for James Houston and he wasn't meeting them and he wasn't expanding his game the way that they wanted. And so maybe they were asking too much of James and maybe if they simplify things and keep him in just a pass rushing role and that's all he ever is, and that'll be enough. I think their perspective maybe has changed on that from training camp,
Yep.
Based on this season. Right. But it's easy as a fan, it's easy to fall in love with these guys that can be inspirational leaders and game changers on the field. But the big picture is it's the fact that the Lions are willing to make the hard decision. And that's like, I can't imagine Patricia would have ever cut a guy that was a former Patriot. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Yet, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I hate to say it but this is what you want out of a leadership group. Like the leadership that is saying the ultimate goal is to get better and we have to get better and we'll have to make the hard decisions to do that.
I mean, the situation to me is almost not identical, but very close to Michael Brockers, right? Like an emotional leader of this defense that they loved, but it was just time to move on with him. And I know people don't see it the same with Bugs because they don't see that Bugs is necessarily struggling as much as Brockers was. But like, I take this, like, there's a YouTube short from a week ago that's Isaiah Bugs, like, hyping up the team. The caption on the play is, or on the video is, Isaiah Bugs had us ready to run through a brick wall. In Minnesota, he was there breaking down the huddle for the NFC North clinching game. And so, like, you think that Lions coaches took that decision easily? Like, how? It's probably something that's going to be asked of Dan tomorrow, right? Is like, how gut-wrenching is this week going to be? Because it almost feels like a 53-man roster cut all over again.
Yeah, the defensive tackle spot is so tough because you're not moving on from Broderick. They seem married to Levi because of what he's done to come back.
Yeah.
That's another emotional attachment for them. Benito is starting and has been starting. And if Alualu is playing more snaps off of the practice squad, it kind of puts Bugs in a really tough spot. Now, could you argue that maybe they should have moved on from Levi instead of Bugs? I mean, I'd really willing to listen to that. But it surely is evident that they're more emotionally attached to Levi than they are to Bugs, even though Bugs has leadership. Like the coaching staff loves Levi.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought about making Levi the cut over Bugs. Again, I don't want to get too much into that kind of talk, but I mean, maybe they're seeing like a glimmer of hope with Levi, right? Maybe that's the idea because, and I think part of it too is like they have players like Bugs already on the roster. They have Benito, they have Alualu, they have, it's not, it's not a glorious position, right? It's a who can stand there and not get pushed around. Like that's all they're really asking of some of these run stuffing defensive tackles. It's not, we don't need this guy to be a guy who can get upfield, a guy who's quick twitch and provide a lot of pass rush. It's who can stand there and take double teams and not get pushed out of the way. And I'm not saying those guys are a dime a dozen, but I'm also not going to sit here and pretend like Isaiah Buggs was some irreplaceable guy. And with Levi, if he ever reaches the potential that they, thought they were getting when they drafted him, that's a more unique position, some would say more valuable, where you have this quick twitch athlete who can provide immediate pass rush, who can and still be a decent run defender too. But man, I don't know. I've all but lost hope on Levi, if I'm being completely honest. It's cool that he's still on the team. It's cool that he's healthy enough to be on the active roster every now and then. But that is kind of an interesting thing to think about with this decision is why wasn't it Levi? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have an answer. Like, it's tough because, like I said, a lot of these decisions come down to the immediacy of them, but you also have to have long-term decision making as well.
Yeah.
And that's why every time Brad is asked about every time Dan Campbell is asked about is this guy going to be elevated, every time he says, I got to talk to Brad about it. Right? Like, because he's involved in this. Like, he's part of, we don't want to move on from, yes, Broderick Martin has been in an active for a healthy scratch for more games than not, but we don't want to move on from Broderick because we think Broderick could be Derek Barnes in 2 years, 3 years, where he's now starting a year or two down the road. Whereas we think maybe Buggs' ceiling is kind of capped, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a tough one. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll leave it at that. It's a tough
because
situation.
we don't even know, like, for certain. Right?
I guess not, but
it sure seems that way. But we don't know, like, hey, is he going to, it sure doesn't look like he's coming back in any capacity. It sure looks like he's gone and isn't coming back in any capacity. At the same time, we've been fooled before by social media posts. You know what I mean? So
sure. You know what this means?
It means sure doesn't look good.
It means the Lions finally picked up the phone and called in Ndamukong Suh. Kidding, by the way. All right, let's thank some subscribers. We'll answer some more questions and then we'll get back into it. I'd like to cut that part out of the podcast and maybe upload that to YouTube separately since it's breaking news, and maybe even throw it up on the website. But yeah, interesting. Anyways, let me get to some subscribers. Lost Oceans, thank you for the what's up?
Sorry, go ahead. I'll get back to it.
Okay. Lost Oceans, thank you for the 34-month subscribe to the channel over on Twitch. Johnson Alex, thank you for the 11 months, says bounce back and get ready for the playoffs. That's what we're doing here. Liam, thank you for the 13 months. Says Dan Campbell might have controlled fury. I have uncontrolled rage. Yeah, don't blame you. If you're a Pride of Detroit Direct subscriber, you saw a little bit of Erik's uncontrolled rage.
What?
Here's the thing. When we recorded that, I was in a so much better mood, and then once like the reports started coming out that the NFL was like, yeah, it's actually the Lions' fault. I'm like, all right. You want to throw down? I was ready to move on. You want to throw down, NFL? Scotty Questions. Hey, thanks for stopping by, buddy. Thank you for the 19 months. There was an FTR. Yeah, I think we probably have to get an FTR emote going at this point. Lion Suffer, 13 months subscribe channel, says Jeremy, I'm pretty pissed off at Chris's rant about Texas after the loss. It had nothing to do with Bushes or Texas. I'm not getting into that either. I don't know. Goose, thank you for the 7 months, says this sub is reporting as eligible ref. Fair enough. Dark Jedi, thank you for the 1 month. Thank you for the first time subscription. Welcome. Enjoy your ad-free experience. Dark Jedi, appreciate you. Thank you. Enjoy some of the emotes over there. Zach Trefla, or Trelfa, thank you for subscribing over on YouTube. Dark Jedi also subscribed on YouTube, so I appreciate you subscribing on both ends. And you know what? watch us wherever you want to watch us. Either way is fine with us. Bougie, thank you for the 18 months, I should say, 13 in a row. And J Russ, 28 months, subscribe to the channel, says can't wait for Detroit versus Dallas in the playoffs. Ooh, man, that'd be a little fun. Not gonna lie. Okay, we can answer a few more questions here if you guys.
I saw one from Dan where he tagged me, where he was responding to somebody else, but he said, "I believe they reset, right, Erik Schlitt." Now I couldn't find the original question, but I believe Dan's probably talking about the practice squad elevations. Yes, the practice squad elevations do reset in the playoffs. Those have been confirmed to us.
Yes,
we wrote about it, and then there was a report to the opposite, and so we reached out, and it was again confirmed to us that the roster elevations do reset in the playoff. I can tell you our source is as legitimate as it.
Yeah, and it should be interesting to see how the Lions use that in their favor, right? Because I think Bruce Irvin is a candidate to stay on the practice squad. He's out of elevations at this point, so you'd have to play this upcoming game without him. I think that's totally fine. I don't think you need Bruce Irvin in this upcoming game if you want him. But then again, at the same time, you have James Houston potentially coming back, and is there room for your game day roster in wild card round for both of them?
Because look, you just used Charles Harris for like 4 snaps.
Right.
Like with Bruce Irvin, yes, there's room.
Okay.
There's room for both.
Yeah.
You might get Kabinda on the practice squad. You might the hard part
Kabinda
is you're going to have like 6 guys on the practice squad that you're like, these guys could all contribute, but you only get 2 of them.
Right.
That's going to be the hard part is which 2.
Yeah. And so I think there's a couple of like balancing acts you have to do. Like if I think you'd probably want Ferkser if what's his name's not ready. If Brock Wright, sorry. Did he return to practice last week? I feel like did he not? I thought maybe he had a Thursday practice in him. I don't remember.
I'll double check.
But they didn't put him on IR, so maybe there's a little bit of optimism that he comes back for the playoffs. And so you don't use one there. Alu is one of those.
You elevated your kicker. You signed your kicker. You
signed your kicker.
You don't have to elevate him now.
So yeah, and I think it's fair to say that Kabinda is probably coming back to the. Well, I guess it could go either way. Kabinda is definitely coming back. I don't know if it's practice squad or 53. To me, it would make more sense to put him on the practice squad, and then you can elevate him if you seem to love the guy. And so, it
really just depends. Like it depends on how much you're going to use him, right?
Yeah. So yeah, Kabinda could be. Let's go over that. Practice squad guys who you think could be elevations in the playoffs. So Bruce Irvin, Alu.
Yes. As long as the offensive line stays healthy, you're good there.
Kabinda.
Right?
Kabinda. Chase Lucas. I mean, you said it, like gunner.
He's your best special team gunner, yes, by far. Like it's not even close at this point.
And it's probably those 4. Am I missing anybody? Ferkser if
Brock Wright's not eligible.
Brock Wright's, I don't know why I keep forgetting Brock Wright's name. All I have to do is just like, who did Dan Miller keep saying over and over again? Oh yeah, Brock Wright.
Yes.
But I don't think you want to sign any of those guys to the 53-man roster.
The only one would be Kabinda in my mind because because of what he does on special teams.
Yeah.
And he can give you an extra contribution. See, like for example, Bursker, he was tight end 3, only played special teams. He didn't play a single tight end snap. So he was there for emergencies, right? Yep. So if Brock Wright's still not ready, I could still see them justified in signing Kabinda and just saying, we're going to give all those snaps that we gave the Fersker to Kabinda.
Yeah.
And then we're going to then have Dan Skipper be tight end 3. Instead of using Dan Skipper twice, we're going to use him 6 times. Right.
Yeah.
And we'll just have to make sure he knows how to swipe his jersey properly and only send one guy to the ref.
All right.
And,
all right. We almost didn't talk about it. Yeah. I mean,
But yeah, like, so I think you could get away with getting Kabinda, maybe Alu Alu if, but I don't see why, especially when you're going to be bringing a lean back.
right.
Only reason I think you add Bruce is if you're moving on from one of the other edge guys, and it's
Which
just
is
a one for
possible,
one.
right?
Yeah, it's possible. Sure, certainly.
But you're also going to need a
Um,
1-for-1 switch with James Houston when he comes back.
right, right. And
Because
I
you
mean, like,
remember, like when James Houston comes back, it can't be like, oh, great, let's just put James Houston on the practice squad. No, he goes on to the 53,
yeah,
and you're not
like,
gonna be able to Jason Kabinda where you cut him and then slide him onto the 53.
last week, Julian was inactive. Charles played 4 snaps. Romeo played 8. Bruce Irvin played 18. That's more than all 3 combined. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean,
As
yeah, you could sign him to the 53 if you're. The issue is just what we were saying. Like, how many guys do you feel are necessary to bring up from the practice squad?
Like, I think Romeo's a guy that they like and they're going to want to keep. But I think Charles and Julian are vulnerable because they're redundant. And Charles, Julian, Bruce Irvin, and James Houston, all 4 of them are kind of the same player, and so it's going to be pick and choose. And
the tricky part for me, the tricky part for me is though, like, James Houston was not in a. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. Like, James Houston was not a guy that was high on this coaching staff's mind when he was last on the roster and playing.
Right.
And so are you going to cut one of those guys or bench one of those guys for a James Houston who has not played a game in 3 months?
Well, it depends on how he practices. Right?
Yeah, I guess it does.
Like, really?
Because I do want to throw this possibility out here, and I think it's a very real possibility. James Houston never gets activated this year. Like, I think that is on the table.
Sure.
It certainly doesn't sound like he's going to play this week. So they're going to have to make the decision then the following week whether is he
no.
Wait.
No, because he just started.
2.
Yeah, he just started it. So
okay.
They could wait. Yeah, they could wait another one if they needed to.
Right.
The thing is I do wonder if their perspective on James Houston and his role has changed, because at the beginning of the season they said we need a Sam, we need a Sam, we need a Sam. And it's going to be Charles Harris, and James is going to be his backup. And then it was like, Charles Harris isn't working. Now James Houston's hurt. Let's try, let's try Jack Campbell. Oh no, let's try Derek Barnes. Oh no. All right, let's just sign Bruce Irvin and see if we can just get a pass rusher out there. Oh, look, that's working. Maybe we can do the same thing with James Houston now. And so,
but it's a guy coming out cold, right? Like that's the huge risk in it. As I know we're fresh. That is a good way to spin it positively. but like, to expect James Houston to like shoot out of a cannon like that when he's only even been practicing for 3 weeks is a risk. It's a hard place to put him in, and so it's interesting.
Yep.
By the way, Jerry Jacobs just quote tweeted Isaiah Bugs and says, "The realist, nothing but love for you, man. For real, bro. Keep being the best you. Learned a lot from you, my guy." So that, I think that speaks to him not being a locker room cancer, which is.
Oh yeah, no, certainly.
Which,
no, I don't think that was ever.
I understand why some people might think that with again how it went down initially in week 1 when he was week 1 inactive, right?
Yes.
And he wasn't happy about it.
Yeah.
And he let people know he wasn't happy about it. But anyways, should we jump into it? I kind of want to jump back into it a little bit. I kind of want to write something on Isaiah Bugs, and it doesn't look like anyone else on the staff is currently available, unfortunately. But that's how it works.
There's a lot of speculation on it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, like we're writing an article without any definitive. It's like 99.9% going to happen.
Right.
Okay. But at the same time, I don't want to write that article. And then have it not happen or something like that. Be like James Houston or Isaiah Bugs.
That's why you phrase it a certain way. You don't say Isaiah Bugs cut from Detroit Lions. You say Isaiah Bugs appears, or, says his goodbyes to Detroit Lions. Something like that.
I don't want to write it.
All right.
I don't want to write that. It's too too much sadness going on now.
All right, we'll get back into your questions here on podcast, on whatever. I don't know what to say, but if you have more questions about it, about anything, you can. I would wait until we're done with this segment, and then we'll continue to answer some questions after we're done with it. So here we go. And we are back here on the Midweek Mailbag Podcast, answering all of your questions here as we head into the final week of the regular season. I teased it at the end of the last segment. Let's jump right back into it. Ed Helinski at Mr. Ed315 on Twitter asks, who's deserving of the team MVP? Feel free to list several lines. I think this is kind of a fascinating question because I think most of the time you kind of default to the quarterback, and Jared Goff has been good this year. I don't know if he's the team MVP or not, so I'll let you answer first. Who do you think is this team's MVP?
Boy, I think you could go so many different ways.
I do too.
Right?
I have one that I feel pretty confident about as my answer, but I'm curious to see what you have to say.
I mean, if you're looking from a pure statistical measurement, the year that Amon-Ra has had has been sensational. 120 plus catches, 1,200 yards, right? Or not is it not 120? It's like 112. Sorry. Yeah. But like he has a chance to get
7 100-yard games or so.
Yeah, 8.
Is it 8 now?
Actually. It's crazy. Yeah, you could make an argument for Amon-Ra. Like, so if this was like a MVP, standard MVP where everyone votes based on stats, I think what Amon-Ra has done certainly makes him a justifiable candidate. I agree with you. You could put it on Jared Goff and say, man, his ability to thread needles and win games has been sensational. Sam Laporta set every rookie record that you can think of at tight end. And so but again, was he worthy enough to be the MVP? Jahmyr Gibbs has been sensational, but I don't know. For me, I always default to MVP. I know it's most valuable player for I know there's different definitions for MVP. Let me put it this way. And I know that when we talk about MVP on our staff even looks at it differently.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it is MVP is who's your best player? Like, who is the guy who is the best player on your team?
Just say it already. Just say it already. Because I agree with you 100%. I know who's coming.
Penei Sewell.
It's Penei Sewell. Yes.
Yeah. Like he has stepped up into a leadership role.
Yep.
He's the guy who's leading the entire team.
Yep.
He is the number 1 graded offensive tackle by PFF in the NFL. He is everything that you thought he was going to develop into. He is developing into in front of our eyes. So throw the statistics out on this type of award, and just give it to your best player. And that's Penei. Penei's best player on his team, hands down.
Penei Sewell, to me, already deserves in the pantheon, I think I got that word wrong, but of Calvin Johnson and almost Barry Sanders. Like, that's the kind of generational talent this guy is already in his third year. And what does Dan Campbell and really everyone on the team always say is the engine under the hood? It's the offensive line. It's what makes this team go. It's what makes them a top 5 offense. It's what makes them a top 5 running offense. Makes them. I mean, he handled Micah Parsons for the majority of that football game when he was lined up opposite Micah Parsons, which is an impossible ask.
Mm-hmm.
He is that good of a football player, and he's so essential to what they do. I think he qualifies for whatever definition you want to put for MVP player. He is the best player on the Lions. He is the most valuable player because he is so essential to what they do. And to me, it's honestly not that close.
I think he's the best player by far. I agree with you. When he was drafted, I said he is a generational talent.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've used generational talent really on any prospect, and since I can remember, right? but Panay was generational. He
Yep.
should have been, if it wasn't a quarterback heavy class that year, if they didn't have these elite receivers, he should have gone in the top 3. You know what I mean? Like he was that talented of a player. He was the number 1 player on my board that year for the Lions. Because this is a guy who is going to anchor your entire franchise for a decade plus, probably a decade and a half. And he's everything you're going to want. And they're going to pay, like I said earlier in the first half, they're going to pay him in islands, and he's going to be worth it because you're not going to find a better player at one of the most top 3, critical positions on any roster in the NFL. It is a luxury that Lions fans get to enjoy for a long time.
And our live audience is rightfully screaming at us. Frank Ragnow deserves to be part of the discussion, and they're absolutely not wrong.
Second best player on this team.
Right. And center is a criminally underrated position by I think most analysts, because I think I would argue it's, I don't know, maybe like 3rd or 4th most valuable position on offense. And when he wasn't in the lineup, the offensive line certainly struggled to a degree. So he deserves to be in the conversation as well.
You see this in college now. Yeah. That
we certainly saw how important Alabama's center was last night.
But that's not where I was going with that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But you will see players in the NFL, or I'm sorry, players in college, where college coaches will take a guy who was playing left tackle for them for years and then shift them into center because they're like, this is the most important position on the offensive line right now. And as we've talked about earlier, the whole left tackle, right tackle thing is becoming more even.
Yeah.
But that center position is always going to be the one of the more pivotal on the roster.
We are struggling with pronunciation in the Pantheon.
Well,
pivotal.
I'm cold. It's wintertime. It's my fault. I need to warm up and get my articulation back.
That's right. All right. Next question here from Krolik on Twitter. Our good friend Jason Krolik asks, when do you think James Houston gets activated? Now, we just kind of talked about this off air because the news-ish that it appears Isaiah Buggs is getting released just hit Twitter in the middle of this. But we talked about this because I put out there that there's a small but significant chance, I think, that James Houston does not get activated. It certainly seems like he's not going to play in this game. Dan Campbell basically said as much on the radio this morning. But do you think he's a shoo-in to be ready for that first postseason game?
I don't think he's a shoo-in.
Yeah.
They're going to need to be clicking on all cylinders in that game, and that's a tough game to bring a guy back as a warm-up. I was hoping that he would be ready for Week 18 so he could use that as a tune-up, like I think they'll do with Aleem and Gardner Johnson. So now I think by him potentially not being ready for Week 18, it does make it more in doubt that he will be able to return for significant snaps in the postseason. So he's a unique player that brings some unique things to the game. And if he practices well, he'll get his opportunity.
Yep.
At the same time, Gardner Johnson looked like he was going to come back after the first week he was in the evaluation window, and now we're in week 3 of the evaluation window before it looks like he's ready to come back. James Houston just started his evaluation window, and as much as fans want him back, and I completely understand that, he may not be ready, and if he is, they may not be willing to risk him, needing to be tuned up for a playoff game.
Yeah, and I mean they have a more seasoned veteran. Like this is the playoffs where you want like veterans out there that can handle the situation, that have been working in practice. Bruce Irvin could be that guy, be the James Houston. Certainly not as effective and explosive as James Houston, but a reliable player out there in a critical part of your season. So, I mean, if James Houston comes out there and starts making some rookie mistakes, you're going to look pretty bad about that decision. And I'm not saying he will, and I'm not trying to hate on James Houston. I know everyone thinks I hate James Houston, but I'm just saying there's a pretty significant risk to putting him out there cold.
Yeah.
But you nailed it, I think, with like, if the guy is practicing well, if the guy seems like he's dialed in, if he's making the right plays, then he's going to play. He's better
Yeah.
than Bruce Irvin. He's just more
Correct.
susceptible to mistakes. And
I agree with you.
And every tiny mistake you make in the playoffs is going to be magnified because you're playing against good teams and you can't afford any sort of shooting in the foot.
Yeah, that's why they went and got Bruce, right? And that's why they've used
Yeah.
him 3 times this season, because he's a reliable veteran that they can count on for a specific role. And yes, he's out of elevations, but those elevations reset in the playoffs. So we're going to get a chance to potentially see him or James Houston, I think, in a very specific pass rushing type role.
All right, let's move on. Next question here from Aaron17 on Twitter says, people are mostly concerned, and rightfully so, about losing Ben Johnson, but is Chris Spielman a potential GM candidate for another team? His hand in the team's turnaround seems underappreciated and could be a big loss if that's something he wants to pursue.
There's absolutely no way he wants to pursue it. If you've ever talked to or listened to any interview he's ever done on the thing,
Yep.
on this situation, he absolutely does not want a GM job. He could have had it. He could have had a GM job here, and he said, "Don't hire me because that I'm not good enough at it, and I don't have the experience, and I'm much better suited in this role where I can help you." And he's probably getting an insane amount of money to do the role that he does, and he does everything behind the scenes in so many different areas,
and with a big old smile on his face. I don't think there's a person in the world that is more satisfied with his job right now than Chris Spielman.
And he has total freedom
Yeah.
to do whatever he wants. And it's not like he does not have a defined role. Like, it's not like this is your job. Chris goes in and people are like, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And he's like, "Sure."
Yeah.
And then he takes it on and he does this crazy thing. And, he'll do TV commitments, and he'll do, he breaks
ticket
down.
Sales.
He just takes, he breaks down film for Lions employees. Like, just because he's like, "Hey,
the football 101 thing." Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, "Hey, I feel like the all aspects of the organization need to be have a better understanding of football, so that I'll just hold a weekly film session and break down football and show everybody, who wants to learn, what they need to." He just does that because he wants to. When when we're at training camp and he's watching the film breakdown, or he's watching the game, breakdown, and watching the plays unfold in front of him. And then when there's a little bit of downtime, he's not just like, schmoozing with his buddies. He goes and he gets a little scoop bucket and he fills in the divots out on he does whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And he gets paid handsomely for it. He's happy. He is a content man right now. I can't see him ever wanting to change that.
No, you're absolutely right, and I'm glad you nailed it before I got an opportunity, because I have like literal receipts of Chris Spielman essentially saying everything you just said. He had a great one-on-one interview with Justin Rogers of the Detroit News. Let me read you some quotes. Says, quote, "From there it was like, let me start defining that role a little bit. So I've been getting freedom to define the role of my job. In order to do that, the one thing I had to get, because it's a paranoid business out there, I had to make sure I had everybody's trust that I have zero agenda other than winning. Zero. I tell everyone, quote, I've already done my thing, man. I have zero agenda. I don't want another role. I'm not looking for another role. My goal is to help everybody succeed at their highest level. When that happens, I feel like I win. I do. When Dave Sears got the assistant GM job in Arizona, we're going to miss him, but I was able to celebrate that. Or when AG gets a head coaching job or Ben gets a head coaching job, I'm going to feel like I played a small part in helping them achieve the goals that they want to achieve." And then this is my favorite part. He says, "And when Sheila, Dan, and Brad hold up a Super Bowl trophy, this is my number one goal. And I'm sitting in the back thinking, quote, I'm good. I'm done. See you. I'll be in Sanibel hanging out with a drink." So he is here and in this role until the Lions lift the Lombardi, and he's gone. That's all he wants out of the NFL anymore, and he's gone. And I love it, and I love Chris Spielman for it. And thankfully, we have that until we don't.
First hire by Sheila.
Yeah.
It was her first thing.
Yep.
Bring Chris Spielman back. And she said, "What do you want to do?" And then he went, "I don't know." And she went, "Cool. Here's an insane amount of money to just do whatever you want. Help me win."
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
It is brilliant.
Brilliant.
It was her first move and maybe her most brilliant. So
yeah, smartest.
all right, next question here is kind of staying on the same ish topic here. Detroit Oil Money on Twitter. B Penny asks, obviously Ben Johnson is a hot offseason candidate from the Lions, but besides the coaching staff, you think any front office people could get hired for a GM job elsewhere?
Well, Ray Agnew would be the most logical candidate, right? Like he's
Sure.
on a short list of potential GMs. When you look at what Brad Holmes has done through the draft and building a roster basically from taking it down to the studs and building it back up, Ray was the right hand for that. And there's going to be organizations that look at Detroit and try and model
Right.
what their rebuild off of how Detroit has rebuilt this organization. And so Ray's going to be at the top of some of those lists. He's going to get interviews. I think he's already gotten a one or maybe two in the past, and he should get more. And so, yeah, Ray would be a guy that I think would be the most likely candidate to get hired off the front office. At the same time, he's a guy who has been around Holmes for a while now.
Yeah.
I mean, like decades. Like they have been tight for a while. So I do think it would have to be the right opportunity, but yeah, Agnew seems like he's the most likely candidate. Even though I do think there are a couple others.
Yeah, I think it's a little early for Ray Agnew. I know he's been participating in that. I forgot what they call the event there.
Yeah, where they promote the
networking
GMs essentially.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the networking event, and the fact that he came up on the pro personnel side, I think might delay his move to GM because I mean, obviously that's part of the job, but I think if you're hiring a new GM, you want a guy who knows the draft back and forth, and that's not quite Ray Agnew yet. Obviously, he's getting more involved in that sort of stuff in the past couple of years.
Yeah. Well, he's involved. He's just not a primary
right
head.
And so
right.
I might put the possibility of Lance Newmark ahead of him. I'm curious what you think about that. Yeah, go ahead.
I think Lance could be on the. Lance has been around for a long time, but I think Lance, like Sears, could end up going somewhere for a bigger promotion. I don't think Lance would necessarily be a guy who would jump to to a GM spot. But again, we're limited in how much we know about these guys.
Yeah.
We only get minor interactions with them. So it's hard to say. But
right.
Man, Lance has been around through multiple regimes.
Yeah,
he has identified multiple candidates that have played out. I always have fun when they show the draft, like the behind the scenes stuff.
Right,
I always watch Lance. Watch Lance
to see who's most thrilled about the pick, right? Because that's their guy.
Because like when Kirby got drafted, Lance was like in the corner, like trying not to show his excitement, but Lance knew that was the guy.
Yeah.
Lance was the guy who he identified Tracy Walker for the previous regime as well, and they were all super stoked about getting Tracy. So yes, Lance has a terrific eye for talent, and I think he could be a guy. I think you have to look at like the fact that like Hudspeth was promoted into Dave Sears' role, and so that makes him another candidate that someone's going to look at.
Sure.
When you look at the financial side of things, Disner is going to be a guy that I think people are going to look at as well.
Yep.
And I think Disner's a guy who's again local, so and he's a guy they absolutely love. They've handed Disner so much more of the stuff that Rod Wood used to do, and I think that they're benefiting from having Disner's football mind behind that as well. So yeah, they got lots of candidates to keep going. So there's so many good front office guys that I think could go. But in running like through all these different names, what we also know is you can see the layers of this organization and this regime that like if they do lose talent, they have guys to make it up. So.
Yep. And remember, if you lose someone that becomes a GM, a minority candidate, you get some draft capital out of it as well. And I guess Dorsey is also in that conversation a little bit. I feel like his time as a general manager is probably over. Now he's just kind of like that senior assistant guy, the same way some coaches become senior defensive coordinator, senior defensive assistants, and things like that. But
yeah, the one guy I don't really want to mention, so I'll just whisper it here, is Brandon Sosna. I think Sosna is a guy who is, again, way, way underrated. And I think they're trying to keep him under the wraps. He is one of the guys that runs their contracts.
Yeah.
He does a lot of different things, but running those contracts and finding ways to fit the cap, huge for him. And so like him and Disner running that show together, awfully impressive duo.
We'll have Chris bleep out the name there. So
Thank you.
that no one else hears.
Thank you.
All right. Last question here before we get out of here. One that is certainly a topical one. At generic user 216 on Twitter asks, what are your thoughts on playing the starters against Minnesota, especially guys like Laporta and JMO who are banged up? Now, Dan Campbell has made it clear a couple times now that they are going to play their starters. He said on the radio today, part of the reason for that is that the 2 seed is still open, and by the time they're taking the field, neither Dallas nor the Eagles will have played. They've both got the late afternoon spot, which means if the Lions win, by the end of the football game, they're still going to be in play for the 2 seed, so they're going to do that. But I think it is an appropriate question, one, to ask whether we agree, two, what do you do with maybe some of these guys that are battling an injury right now? So where do you stand on that?
I think there is a history that shows that if you rest your guys, they sometimes have a little bit of rust they have to knock off a week later because they fall out of that rhythm.
Yeah.
And so I completely understand the concept, and I actually prefer the concept of playing your starters.
Whole game?
At least, no, you don't have to play them the whole game. You don't have to play them the whole game. But I think you have to get them in. You want them to keep their rhythm. Like, you want them to go through their normal routine. You want them to get ready for the game, dress for the game, go through all that, play, go out there, start, have a game plan, go through the pre-planned plays that have been organized by Ben Johnson, right? Like, you want that script played out. You want everything that you can. And if you need to pull them, great. If you've got a guy who's got a lingering issue and you don't want to play him, totally get that. Like, I'm actually not expecting JMO to play this week.
Agree.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I think JMO is a guy you could sit. I think Frank probably plays, even though you maybe don't need him to. But I also think you might pull Frank when you pull Jared Goff type of thing. You know what I mean?
And that's key to me. Like, some people are suggesting, pull Frank, maybe pull Decker, veteran guys that could use the rest. If you're doing that, do not put Jared Goff out there without his left tackle and his center. Do not do that. That is a very, very bad idea, especially against an aggressive Vikings, pass rush. Do not do that.
Yeah. No, you have to have the Goff Ragnow combination tethered together, in my opinion. And so I think Decker plays the whole game. I'm not worried as much about him. I think he'll be fine. But a guy like JMO could rest. A guy like Frank and, like I said, Goff could come out late in the game. I don't know if there's anybody else that's like jumping out to me. I'm sure like somebody's got something lingering that should probably be considered, but
Laporta is a name that's come up, but Dan basically
but he said he was fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. I say you play him, and if it's and don't go in there with the game plan of saying I want to pull them out at this. Like, just play your game.
Sure.
Play your normal game. Go out there, beat them up, win, move on to the playoffs with some positive energy.
But if you could just go up 35 in the third quarter,
so
that you can pull everyone.
Yeah,
that'd
play
be
your
great.
Seniors. That'd be great.
Get Teddy Bridgewater out there so that he can play against the Vikings, and it'll be a fun little ending.
I absolutely think Teddy Bridgewater needs to play in this game to like the last series at a minimum, because he's going to retire after this game. Well, no, not technically, because he still has the postseason, but he's going to retire after this season. And for him to get in and play against the team who drafted him is just storybook. Yeah. Right. And it's football is romantic, and Dan Campbell loves that stuff.
At the very least, let him take the knees at the end of the game. At the very least. Yeah. And another common question that gets parlayed with this one is Hendon Hooker going to get some time? And I'm not 100% sure on this, but I'm pretty sure no. He's not ready, first of all. Second of all, I think the Lions want to win this game. I think Dan Campbell is going to do everything he can to win this game. And so And yeah, and I think Teddy's the next guy off the bench because of everything we just said, because he won't screw up the game necessarily. And all respect to Hendon Hooker, but he's only been practicing for a month. So,
and Hendon is probably going to be inactive because you have a healthy roster right now.
Yeah.
And you're going to want to have all your guys and to keep him active for, a series or whatever. It just doesn't make sense because you're already limited in how many players you can keep on game day. I don't think they have the space for it. I think we're going to have to wait to see Hendon's debut.
Yep. All right. We'll leave it there. If you ever want more of this kind of content, come watch us live on Twitch and YouTube, because we do a bunch of question answering in between segments after the show, all sorts of stuff. Twitch.tv/Pride of Detroit or YouTube.com/Pride of Detroit. But until then, thank you all for listening. We will maybe be doing I don't know if we're going to do a first bite. We might do something in replacement of first bite this week, since we love a reef. Don't get us wrong, but it's not all that exciting of a game to preview, if we're going to be completely honest. So if you don't hear for us until then, we'll see you next time. It's chaos. Be kind.
Recording stopped.
Excuse me.
We probably should have done the front office stuff off air, in case someone's listening.
You that concerned that we are leaking Lions secrets?
Mm-hmm.
Carter, thank you for the 17 months subscribed to the channel.
Yes, Dan, we have 8 offensive linemen on the 53.
Yeah. I was gonna say Erik carry the show while we write something on Isaiah Buggs, but now I just don't care. So, not that I don't care about the situation, but we'll get to it when we get to it.
We don't have to do anything until 4.
By the way, I'm looking at my Lions coverage Twitter timeline.
Yeah.
And Paula Pash just retweeted Football Zebras referee assignments, and the one she retweeted was for Steelers Ravens. Do you want to know why?
Because it's Brad Allen. That's what I was gonna look. That's a terrible game because that has implications for the Steelers.
You're right. It does.
What a terrible game to put him on. Put him on
nationally televised too. It's the Saturday 4:30 game.
Yeah. What an insane decision.
Brad Allen is going back on ESPN. It is literally the Monday Night Football broadcast again.
What an insane decision. When we get done, I'm going to vent about that.
I'm definitely tweeting about it right now.
It's like
that's just laser mouth. That is the Goofy meme. I'll fucking do it again. That is amazing. Whoops. I can't believe they're doing that to him. They're trotting him out to be the storyline again. Why would they do that? Some downgrade. You put him in an important game a week 18. I can't help but laugh. It's this almost feels like, to me, is like it's almost a punishment. It's almost like, you embarrassed us on the national TV. Now I'm going to embarrass you on national TV by trotting you out there and having Troy Aikman. I don't know if it's going to be a Troy Aikman and Joe Buck broadcast again, but if it is, just to have them talk about it again.
That's annoying. Like,
I think it's fun.
annoying.
At this point, I don't even think it's annoying. I
don't.
think it's hilarious.
I'm annoyed by it. I am annoyed by it. So, like, he should be. Okay. I don't even have a good game. I can't even think of the schedule. That's how, frustrated I am by it. Stupid Brad Allen. I get unusually irate
Can
about referees
I?
sometimes.
100% you do. Do you have like a power ranking of the guys you hate the most, or do you not want to do that?
Oh no. Well, no. No.
Who's the guy that you?
Clete Blakeman. I hate Clete
Okay,
Blakeman.
Blakeman.
Clete Blakeman is the worst.
Is Brad Allen has not unseated him yet?
I might as well. He might as well. They're both terrible. Blakeman's just horrible. Blakeman and Allen are. I mean, Allen. My gosh. Who is? Is this all we know? We only know these guys so far. We don't have the Lions one yet.
Oh, I don't know. They usually tweet them out kind of slowly, I think.
Okay, let me just check their site then and see. Lions are getting. Oh no, it's not even filled in. Yeah, it's not filled in yet.
Brad Holmes Bulge did the goofy meme, which it's so perfect. In case anybody doesn't know the meme I'm talking about. It's so good. I don't even know where this came from. But it's my favorite. It's my favorite. We have to be able to laugh about this, Eric, at some point. I know it's still too soon for some people.
Sure. We'll go laugh at it again, I'm sure someday. Not right now. There's some good refs out there. Brad Allen is not one of them. So why not put him in a critical game? Like, it doesn't mean anything for the Ravens, so like I'm sure that, but still, it's a Saturday. So dumb. So dumb.
Smart. Roll them out there right in prime time again. Not prime time, nationally televised, but well, we can continue to answer some of your questions here. We got about 30 minutes or so time that we can just hang out for a little bit. Do you expect coaching hires to be slow until Ben Johnson is available for interviews? Did they change the rules yet? I feel like they were talking about changing the rules in terms of timing for all that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I forgot what they are. We'll have to jump into that research because obviously that's important.
I remember it was, yeah, I don't want to speak out of turn, but essentially it was like they can't interview him until after the fact.
Yeah. I mean, there might also be the fact that a certain someone is coaching a national championship game that might slow things down a little bit too. Did
you see our Slack chat on that?
Yeah. I mean, I saw some of it. It went too long, and I'm just like, all right, I don't care anymore.
Yeah. We went down the rabbit hole on that conversation. I view that certain someone as Jim Harbaugh as having too cushy of a job. Like, it's like you get these coaches that like go to television and then they get the same amount of money to like talk about a game once a week instead of going through the whole process. And you're like, why would they ever leave that cushy job? Like, I get there's a competitive nature to it and blah, blah, blah. But like, once these guys get into these like cushy jobs like that, they're, it's so easy for them to just stay.
Yeah.
Like for years, how long did people think Cowher was going to come back to coach in the NFL after coaching Pittsburgh, to a Super Bowl? And then he's and then everybody, because Cowher was interested in Detroit at one point, but he would never leave. He never left the cushy job. Like there was no need to, right?
But I mean, let's not act completely naive here. Like Jim Harbaugh has shown plenty of interest in the NFL. He walked around like he had the Vikings job 2 years ago.
I also think,
you can't truly believe he's using that as just leverage to get more money out of Michigan every single time.
No. But I think, okay, first of all, let's clarify some things right off the bat. Harbaugh is a weird duck. He is
Sure.
one of one. He
Yes.
is a weird
Okay.
duck.
I'm glad you're
There's
admitting
only
that.
one. Oh, yeah. There's only one Jim Harbaugh in this entire world. And the only person that knows what he does for certain is him.
Okay.
And that's
Fair.
it. Even, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, with Harbaugh, there could be any reason. There could be anything. But all I know is at Michigan, he can do whatever he wants, and there's almost no consequences. Like, you can
Get suspended for half the season.
you can you get suspended half the season, and they're still like, I would like to pay you $10 million a year, Jim Harbaugh. Like, he can do, like, I've never seen Jim Harbaugh this season. I have never seen him answer one question from the media. That's always like, Jim, how do you think your guys did today? Well, Happy New Year. And you should talk to Blake Corum. He's the hero. And then he walks away. Like, you can't do that in the NFL. You have to three times a week.
Sure you can.
No. Belichick is the closest one, and he just sits there miserable for 15 minutes 3 times a week. Harbaugh can do what he has license to kill in his job right now. He can do whatever he wants. It doesn't matter. Like, he can bend the rules, he can break the rules, he can get suspended, and they're still like, hey, Jimmy, you just write the number you want on this check and we'll just give it to you. He can do whatever. He can do whatever. He's never going to get fired. And will he make less than he would make if someone threw a book at him in Chicago or something? Yeah, he'd make less, but he'd be restricted, and eventually his weirdness will bubble over, and he'll leave. He has it so easy in his current job that there's no reason for him to ever. Okay, so I think his constant interest in the NFL is recruiting. Excuse me, I think in his mind he can walk into a kid's house and be like, hey, you want to go to the NFL one day? Man, the NFL's knocking on my door every year. They want me. They want my program. They want what we do. You come into this program, we can get you to the NFL. And I know that it's back asswards there,
right,
of way of doing it. But Jim Harbaugh is a weird duck. He is a weird duck. And in his mind, it probably makes sense.
Yeah, maybe. Because to me, from the outside, if I'm looking at it, if I'm moving to a program whose head coach is flirting with the NFL literally every freaking offseason, that scares me away.
None of these guys care.
That scares me away a little bit. I don't know.
It's ridiculous.
Let me ask you this question. You've maybe gotten it before. I've certainly gotten it before.
Yes.
Because the Chargers job, like, that's the one he's commonly connected to so far.
Oh, Jim?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
But cool. There's another.
I'd rather him go there than Ben.
That was going to be my question. That was going to be my question, because Ben Johnson is a name that has also hovered around the Chargers job, I feel like, a lot this offseason. And so which one would you rather lose as a Michigan fan? And I'm... Yeah,
don't let the sweatshirt fool
rip
you.
that thing off. Like, I'll keep Ben Johnson for even if it's just
fool you.
If it's one more year, I'd rather have one more year of Ben Johnson than losing. Yeah, like to me, I'm almost sick of the. It's hard for me to say this literally hours after Michigan punched their ticket to the national championship game, but part of me is like sick of all of this with Jim Harbaugh. Like, can we just stop this and have a normal coach?
No, he's fine. It's like honestly, like he's going to do whatever he wants, and that's what it is. What it is.
Yeah, he
is the strangest duck I've ever met. I've ever like interacted with. Like, he's so unusual. But whatever, it works.
It certainly does.
A certain type of player. I mean, look, he's been to the playoffs 3 times. Now he finally gets to the finals this time. But like, and I know I don't know. Him and his brother are obviously very good coaches.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. They're both doing phenomenal, and this isn't the first time that they've both done well at the same time either. Right. They both went to the Super Bowl against each other. So like, I know he's competitive. I know his name is always going to be in the coaching cycle, and that's fine. As a Michigan fan, I don't care. It is what it is. At the same time, as a NFL, as a guy who covers the NFL as well, I think it's more annoying from an NFL perspective. But yeah, I don't think he's ever going to leave. I think it's too cushy. It's too cushy.
Lions have an open roster spot, by the way, right? They already
do. They filled it with Ferkser.
They signed him to the 53.
Yeah, because they elevated. They elevated both Alu and Irvin, so they had to sign Ferkser in order to get all three of them up. And remember, they signed Ferkser probably because if he gets cut, he's more likely to pass through waivers than the other two.
That's right.
So that's my guess.
Sorry. I got distracted because I think Hamza is writing.
Oh, okay.
We did talk about Bugs getting cut in between segments.
Got myself all worked up.
Yeah, I know. Dude, you
go.
feel passionately about.
Well,
it's
silly.
I almost want to write something about Brad Allen too, but I wrote the Dan Miller radio call as like, this is the last one I'm doing on this guy. Like
you even said it when we came on the show. This is the end of it. I'm not bringing that up. We're not talking.
I want to move on, but man, it's so funny, and I think Lions fans are either going to get a kick out of it or hate it. I don't know. I'm probably not going to. It'll be in notes. It'll be in notes. We'll leave it there.
Okay, here's another question from Awesome Mammoth. Who do I prefer in the round one of the playoffs? Did you talk about who you prefer on the?
I wrote a whole story on it in the question of the day today.
Oh yeah, I read that. I agree with you.
Yeah,
I would prefer the Packers over the Rams for multiple points. One of them, it was a point that you even brought up, and probably the point that I'm the most passionate about is because I don't want the playoffs to be about Matthew Stafford. Okay, this is a team that hasn't done something in 30 years, and they deserve to be in the playoffs. This is a Lions team that deserves all the attention. I don't want to see Kelly Stafford on Channel 4. I don't want to hear about Matthew Stafford returning to Detroit. Great. He's good. He's a great player. We all like Matthew Stafford. Cool. Leave. You left. You left. I don't want to hear the storyline anymore. I don't want the whole week leading up to the first round of the playoffs to be about Matthew Stafford, because that's where all the news is going to be about. That's what the local news is going to focus on. That's what the national news is going to focus on. And you can just piss off with that. I want this to be about what the Lions have earned and what they deserve, because they've done something they haven't done in 3 decades. Give them their due. I don't want anything about Matthew Stafford coming to Detroit. I'm not going to write about it. I don't want to read about it. You can leave that at the door. Okay. So yeah, give me the Packers all day. Wes, I hate the Packers. I want revenge for Thanksgiving. So yeah, 100% the Packers over the Rams, in my opinion. There's nothing about the Rams that I want to face.
Yeah.
I get that there's a Jared Goff storyline, and that's great, and whatever. I don't want to hear it. I want this to be about the team, not about 2 quarterbacks in a trade 3 years ago that we have to bring up and talk about it. And I know everybody else wants that because the storylines are fun and they're excited. No, make it about this team. The first round is about this team. I want to hear all about how great the Lions are from the national media. I don't want to hear about somebody else's quarterback.
I'm with you. On a very basic matchup level too, like the Packers are the youngest team in the NFL. That's the team you want to go up against too in the playoffs. A team that is not used to being in this situation. I know we're talking about the Packers, an organization that always seems to be in the playoffs. Not these guys. These guys are all new. These guys are not used to for as good a football as that offense is playing right now. They have not been put into like key big games against good opponents. Like I understand Thanksgiving happened and they deserve credit for it. They played a really good football game. They took it to the Lions. They deserved to win that game, and it was against a good opponent. But like, I'm also going to say this right now, and maybe it backfires and I look like an idiot. I think there's a very good chance the Bears beat him this week. A very good chance the Bears beat him.
Really?
That Bears team is playing some good football right now.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Fields is playing some good football right now. That defense is playing some really good football right now. I think for as much as people who are riding Jordan Love, and let's, rightfully so, he's playing great football right now. I think PFF put it out there. It's been their number 2 quarterback since week 11. And I in that article, I listed out how that passing offense has been a top 5 passing offense since week 10. But I want to see him against the Bears. I want to see him against a Bears team that can do it, that should be motivated in the exact same way the Lions were last year. Whereas, let's kick our division rival out of the damn playoffs and ride this hot hand that we have right now.
Well, it wouldn't kick them out.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, because they
would still,
a lot.
Other things would have to happen, but it would be a key piece. The Packers are in a win and in situation, not necessarily a lose and out.
Right. Because they would need Seattle and Minnesota also both lose. And
I think just one of those teams, right? Because the Rams are in.
Yeah. So there's only one spot left.
Right.
And that one spot could go to, I think the Packers are the highest priority. And then is it the Saints or the Seahawks? I forget which one is next.
Let me look at this. So they just need a team to finish with a better record than to jump them. They're all 8-8. So if the Packers lose, the Seahawks or the Saints could jump them, or the Saints or Bucks, whichever team doesn't win.
Right. So I'm saying for the Packers is to lose and still get in, they would need the Seahawks to lose. They would need the
Saints or Bucks.
Yes.
Maybe
Saints, Bucks, and Seahawks.
Yeah.
Saints or Bucks and Seahawks. But here's the thing: if you want to face the Packers, you need the Packers to win and the Rams to lose, right?
Yes. Assuming the Lions stay on the 3.
Stay at the 3, yeah. But I mean, if you want the Packers to lose and still face them, you would need the Packers to lose, the Saints to lose, the Seahawks to lose, the Eagles to lose, and the Cowboys to lose. Then
you're making my head spin. I don't want to think about that.
I just need like 16.
Honestly,
to lose.
No. I don't want to face the Rams, but if I can face the Rams and the Packers are also out of the playoffs, I'll take that.
Oh, all right.
I'll take that. Screw the Packers. I don't want. Listen, we are about to face an offseason in which everyone but Vikings fans are going to feel pretty darn good about where their team is headed. Bears, you can already sense it with Bears fans, and understandably so. They're playing good football. They have the first overall pick. They have a bunch of cap space. They're in a good position right now. It's going to be a fascinating offseason for them because they have to make a decision on Justin Fields. They have to make a decision with some of their coaching staff. They have to make a decision even with their general manager. Are they comfortable with Poles being the guy with that first overall pick? I don't know. I think the answer is probably yes, considering where the team is going. I don't think they're going to make any changes, whereas a month ago it looked like they might overhaul everything.
Yeah, I think Poles is probably safe because he's acquired all those picks, and I think they're going to want to let him see what he can do with them. I think if the Bears had won a couple of games down the stretch here, I do think they might have made a head coaching change, but I think they've done enough to kind of figure it out. Here's the thing though. If you move on from Justin Fields and you get a new quarterback, I don't know if that means your head coach has a longer leash with a new quarterback or a shorter one because they don't want you to ruin him.
Right.
So, I mean, there's so many moving parts. Nothing is clean with the Bears right now. They could go a lot of different directions. And the only thing you can really count on is that inevitably they're going to mess one of them up.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough though because they've obviously made some really stupid moves, like their wide receiver trade for what's his name that lasted 7 games or whatever it was.
Wait, what?
Before the guy that got disgruntled?
Oh, Chase Claypool.
Chase Claypool. Yeah. Really, really bad move, but also
gave up pick 32 for him. That was awesome.
They absolutely fleeced the Carolina Panthers last year.
Well, because the Panthers are terrible,
right? But
and they have terrible owner and leader. And
I would argue that DJ Moore is a top 10 wide receiver, and they got him for I'm not nothing, but it almost felt like that was a throw into the trade, and they got it.
No, they gave up a pick, like a first round pick. Like they would have gotten more picks.
Sure.
including the first round. Like they had the option to go. I think the Panthers wanted to trade somebody else, but they were like, no, we need a wide receiver one, and I think they probably took less capital.
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course they did, but
yeah,
it was. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Carolina, you're drafting a rookie quarterback and you're taking away the team's best weapon. What are you doing?
Failing.
Yeah.
Miserably.
Oh, we'll just throw DJ Chark, same player.
It's a terrible leadership in Carolina right now.
Prove it. Prove it to me with a random clip from, I don't know, their owner doing anything recently.
I don't have one of those accessible right now.
Stupid Carolina.
Yeah, they do.
Just
they're a
give us
thorn in our side.
give us Brian Burns as just an apology for what you did.
Well, the thing is with the Bears is if they trade Fields, I mean, they may end up getting another really high pick. And if they don't trade Fields, they can just trade out of that one spot. It really just depends on how far they think they can go to still get the guy they want. I think your top two picks are probably both quarterbacks, based on how teams value players and the talent level of those two guys. So my guess is those are probably both quarterbacks, which means who's the next most talented guy? Is it Marvin Harrison? Is it one of the edge rushers like Dallas Turner or whoever?
Hey. Stop getting into draft talk. I see what you're trying to do here.
So, like, look, you got to move. You can move to 3. Is my point, I guess. So you're not going to get as great of a return moving from 1 to 3, but you could still end up getting a nice return.
What do you think Justin Fields would get in a trade? Would he fetch a first?
That's the thing. I think, yeah.
But
it depends
on year 3 or year 4 on his deal.
He's the same as Sewell. You got to pick up. You
okay.
Got to decide
oh, so he's entering his 4th year. You have to decide on your 5th year.
Yeah. So you got to because you got to decide on there. You can pick up his 5th year option. It's an
extra year of cost controlled quarterback. Yeah.
Right. But that's part of the value in figuring him out. Right.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. I do think you get value for him. Again, it depends on what team and where that team's picking.
Yeah.
Because a top 10 pick, a first round pick in the top 10 isn't the same as the first round pick in the top 20 isn't in the top 30. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's way different values on that. So, I mean, I can say first round, but that's essentially like 3 different levels of picks.
Yeah.
So.
I ultimately think they're going to stick with Justin Fields, and I'm just going to have to cross my fingers for the next 4 months that there isn't an NFL team that's going to overpay for the first overall pick. But that's not likely. I mean, someone is. The only hope I can have is that, like, people cooled off pretty quickly on this year's draft class of quarterbacks, right?
Yeah, that's a standard thing that they do every year.
True.
That now next year's class is just going to be so great. Because this year's class has flaws.
Is Drake May like the guy, or Caleb? I don't know.
No. I think it's still between Caleb Williams and Drake May. It just depends. Like May is more of your traditional.
I just got myself into talk about the draft. What just happened there?
I know, it's awesome. I know, it's great. And I think there's going to be some teams that would prefer May. At the same time, there's enough nuance to Williams' games that makes you think. Could he be a Patrick Mahomes type of guy with the right level of development? And if he stops fumbling, that's going to entice people. But May can be, May's, I think you probably look safer, but maybe does May have as high of a ceiling? I don't know. Like it's to kind of put it like in terms of quarterbacks now. If May hits his ceiling, he's probably Justin Herbert. If Williams hits his ceiling, he could be Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's their ceiling.
Yeah.
But who knows? Like if the Bears draft one of them, they could turn into the next Mitch Trubisky. You know what I mean? That's what happened the last time the Bears drafted a North Carolina quarterback. He turned into it was Trubisky. So we'll see. There's enough there's enough debate and breakdowns that's going to happen over the next 4 months that I think people are going to change, their perspectives. But inevitably, the way the league values quarterbacks, if they're not interested in one, they can move down a few spots and still get a good player and acquire some more capital, and they'll be all right. They'll keep kicking the can down the road, and keep dragging along their coaches in front office, and they'll just stay mediocre for a long time. And that'll be fine by me.
Yeah, we got to stop thinking like let's live in the present here. We don't need to worry ourselves over the Bears. We don't have to worry about the draft. We don't have to worry about listen, the team should be. That's how you operate in a football team. But like as fans, like hey, Lions just won the division. Hey, the Lions are about to have a home playoff game for the first time in 30 years. Hey, they're playing good football right now. Let's make a run here. Let's add to the banner that we've already acquired.
That's going to be fun to watch that go up.
When do you think they're going to do it? Someone asked me this. I don't know what.
First game of next year?
Oh, they're not going to do it on Sunday.
Oh, no. I don't think so.
Okay. Someone asked me. I'm like, I don't know. I've never seen them raise a banner.
And I said next year. I said, no, they'll do it next year. I think it's next year for sure. That's my guess anyway.
I think it would be more powerful if they did it either Sunday or the following week, the day of the playoff game. Because if they get bounced in the first round, are people going to be that excited about raising an NFC North champion banner?
Yes. By the time next year rolls around, yes. Yes.
I don't know.
That's all right. They're not getting bounced in the first round anyways. They're going to be pissed about this whole, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I don't care who it is. Tell me this team is not dialed in. Tell me this coaching staff is not dialed in right now.
Yeah.
They're going to host this playoff game. They're going to have their guys tuned in. They're getting a healthier roster.
Intangibles, blah blah blah.
I don't care who comes to town either.
Listen,
it could be the Packers or the Rams or whoever. I don't care. I don't care.
I'm Mr. On Paper. Let me see the matchup. I don't care about these storylines and attitude and all that sort of stuff. Give me who's actually the better football team and who matches up against what team better.
Yeah, on paper you can talk all you want.
Sure.
I like to watch who's doing what. Keys to victory: be better than the other team. That's check. Doesn't matter.
Wow, you just saved 1,800 words for your next article.
The key number one, check, because they're better than both those teams. Okay, they're better than the Packers and they're better than the Rams. Look, I know both their teams are hot. I know both their offenses are great. I know Matthew Stafford coming back to Detroit is a great storyline. I don't care. They're a better team than them right now. This team is going to be dialed in, and I fully expect them to be the better team. They walked into
we're gonna need you on every podcast next week. Just pulling the week 18 from last year rant all over again, and just cutting promos for this team is unstoppable. This team, Dan Campbell, blah 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 blah. Like, I'm not afraid of anybody.
Let's go. I'm ready. That screw job in Dallas last week has set me on a mission. And pull up all the Dan Campbell quotes about his controlled whatever it was, aggression. It's not controlled aggression, but he had great quotes, and I'm misquoting him now because I'm all.
It was a great press conference. I'll give you that. And since Ryan is watching,
Erik,
I'll credit to Ryan, who said he was going to do exactly this and use it as fuel and all that. To me, I don't know, like, he's kind of like playing both sides here. He's like, oh yeah, I've moved past it. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. But then he's also like, but we're also going to use it. I'm just like, okay, but you can't move on from it and then also use it. That's not moving on from it.
Oh no, he's using it. He hasn't moved on from it. If he had moved on from it, he wouldn't be getting as upset as he was. I've moved on from it too. Yeah, you can tell that I've moved. No, I have not moved on from it. Okay. Publicly, I'm telling you that I've moved on. Publicly, I'm telling the fans that they that they don't, that they should all just take a breath and be okay because there's better things to come. But absolutely not. No, he has not moved on from this. That's not pretty. He comes in all, hey, I'm happy to go. And 5 minutes in, he's like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. That's because he hasn't moved on from it.
Yeah,
like, I
you're right.
understand not wanting to talk about it. Like, I get it. But yes, use that fuel. Use it. I want it. I got it. I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna use it all the way through.
Here's the thing, though.
Yes.
And I think he's right to have this overall philosophy of, I keep doing it, but it's important to him. Is like level. It's staying level, right, Eric? It's not getting too high when you're doing well. It's not getting too low when things are bad. And so if you like, I don't know, if you are too high on the emotions of this game, like let's say the Lions have to go into Dallas again, and all week they're saying, we got to get revenge on this team. We got to get revenge on this team. You can lose your focus by being overly aggressive and being like, you need to just dial in and treat this like any other week. To me, that's what got you where you were.
Right, but I agree and I disagree because it's a different set of circumstances. Yes, you need to do things exactly the same, and you don't need to be going in there saying I need revenge. You need to go in there saying we're not going to let what happened to us last time happen again. So we're just going to kick the crap out of them and get to a point where we take the refs out of the conversation. So execute this, execute that, and you get to a point where you get the lead and you take the refs out of the equation. That's where your motivation is. It isn't let's exact some revenge by getting no. It's let's use this. Look what happened here. We made mistakes and we let them in it. And we made it so that the refs could screw us over. Let's eliminate the refs from the equation, execute the game plan, do this. And if you do X, Y, and Z and you follow Eric's 5 keys to the game plan, then you will win. And so, look, because I know they print they copy out, they read it. Because look, he
Eric,
told me
I'm sorry.
Wished that I would put it out before Friday.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, Eric, they need the game plan all week. Why are you sending this out at noon on Friday?
Hey, I'm busy. It's
what if they have a Saturday game, Saturday playoff game?
Look, just if they give me the money to have for a daycare, I'll have more time to write this quicker.
Yeah.
That's it. For me, it's you just
fine.
It's how you spin it.
Yeah.
It's you do your job. Don't let the refs intervene.
I don't know. I try not to play the emotions game in general because I think it's overplayed in general. I think the impact of bulletin board material is overplayed in general.
But it's different though. It's not like he's saying, "Hey, Jared Goff, take the first snap and throw it at the white hat." You know what I mean? Like it's not what they're doing.
But there is something
baseball.
depressing, right? Like I don't know.
No, it's you don't do it as pressing. You do it as this is your job. Do your job.
Yeah.
Don't do more than your job.
Right.
Don't try to be a hero. Like that's what you.
That's the concern about, right?
No, but that's how you sell it. You have to say, look, this is if you do exactly what you're supposed to do, then it doesn't matter what Brad Allen is doing off in the corner by himself. Okay. We need to do this. Let's keep our focus here because this is what the motivation is. It's get rid of them.
Yeah.
Right. Let's take all those intangibles out of the way. And if we follow our game plan, then we'll put 30 on them.
Yeah.
And then it's not even an issue.
Pelissero just tweeted by the way that the Bugs is getting waived, so
that's a son of a bitch.
Does not offer a corresponding move, but obviously suggests that Ali McNeil's back. I think that's probably our sign to get out of here. If you guys want to go back and listen to any of our stuff, we've talked about Isaiah Bugs already. We've talked about a lot of things. That stuff is available on Twitch and YouTube right away. I'm going to see if I can get Chris to cut out the Isaiah Bugs part and maybe post that today. Otherwise, the rest of it will be posted. The actual podcast portion of it will be posted tomorrow. Yeah, that's all I got. Any final words, Eric, before we get out of here? You've had plenty of words.
I'm excited. We're gonna see some victories from now on. That's gonna be great. All the way right up until this fun ride comes to an end. Hopefully in February.
For sure. Oh, and Nick, I missed your resub. Nick Coscarelli, 57 months subscribed to us. Asked, are we going to see Hendon Hooker this week? On the sidelines. You'll see him there. Nah,
He'll be dressed.
He's not going to come in.
As the emergency coordinator.
That's right. All right, guys. We're going to get out of here. Some form of first bite will probably happen this week, so be on the lookout for that. Madden Sim will come back on Saturday, so don't you worry about that, and hopefully I'll be able to figure out the modding stuff. But yeah, we're going to end it there. I'm not going to bother to rate anybody today, but appreciate you all stopping by. We're up to 300 people watching this thing in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, which is awesome. So appreciate all the support, all of the enthusiasm, and we're going to have a good next couple of weeks ahead.